do. So why don't we get started? My name is Bradley Flam. I'm the Director of the Office of Sustainability, and I'm very happy to welcome you to this, the fourth in our series of presentations in the Fall 2021 Sustainability Research and Practice Seminar. We are very happy today to have our colleague from the Office of Sustainability, Ms. Amy Maxcy, speaking about some important analysis that was completed during the spring semester and is going to set us up for some critical work developing zero waste guidelines for Westchester University in the coming semesters. So without further ado, I'd like to thank you again and hand the digital floor over to you, Amy.
Hey, thanks. And thanks to everybody who logged on or showed up in person for this presentation. Brad pretty much gave a summary of what I'm going to be talking about, so I'm not going to overemphasize what he's already said. And I'm just going to go ahead and move straight into the presentation. For those of you who were able to either log on or come in person last week, Brad was able to give us an update on the work to revise the Climate and Sustainability Action Plan. So that's where I'm going to start. I'm going to try to sort of situate our dreams and plans for being a zero waste campus within the Climate Action Plan and then moving forward. So within the Climate Action Plan currently, the version that we have now, there is a section on solid waste and recycling initiatives. And we've made some important progress on the 6 objectives that are currently outlined, namely Objective 1.1, establish a campus zero waste working group. We know we already have the Sustainability Council Zero Waste Committee, or maybe you don't. I'm not sure who all is logged on right now, but you know, we've made progress there. We've made some progress with Objective 4.1 for the establishment of a move out program on campus and more. But we've sort of gotten stuck up here on this Objective 1.2, which is to develop and implement a campus zero waste strategy. So let's see here. So before I go any further, I'd like to just sort of lay some groundwork to define zero waste. The traditional definition and the one used in the previous version of the Climate Action Plan is defined as at least 90% diversion of waste from landfill to incineration. However, there's some flaws with this understanding and definition. And I've got them sort of outlined here, but most notably, that definition lacks an accounting for the reduction in the procurement of materials and the reuse of materials. So diversion only looks at the end life of materials. For example, if Westchester University was to implement a ban on plastic water bottles, but we only measured our waste reduction efforts in terms of diversion, we wouldn't be giving ourselves credit for this at all. Diversion metrics tend to overly incentivize recycling instead of putting the focus on reduction and reuse. And this attitude could also account for our current situation with the recycling crisis. Have you guys heard of the term wish cycling? I don't know if this is new jargon. Looks like I've got one maybe thumbs up here. So wish cycling describes like the act of placing items in the recycling bin that you really wish and you hope are recyclable when in reality they're not. The recycling then becomes contaminated and ultimately useless and ends up in the landfill anyway. So we really need to be focusing more on reduction and reuse and stop thinking of recycling as the sole answer to our waste problem. Okay, so groundwork laid. Here's a quick look at an alternative definition and an example of language that we might want to consider adapting for the revised version of the Climate and Sustainability Action Plan. You can read the text that I've gotten there below. I've also included here a chart that's going to become important as we move along of the zero waste hierarchy. And this really illustrates how waste reduction efforts should be approached and prioritized, with redesign, reduction, and reuse making up the top tier of this upside down pyramid, and then sort of working its way down to, you know, if we can't redesign it, if we can't reduce, if we can't reuse it, you know, then we can start talking about recycling, material recovery, residuals management at the landfill. So it really sort of narrows down the bottleneck there to the absolute last last resort of something ending up in a landfill, you know, or incinerator. I also wanted to include this illustration as well because it helps me really envision the total life cycle of that come in and out of our consumer-based lives. I've actually got a copy of this hanging in my office. I just love it so much. I picked it up at a conference. But you'll see the actions in green are giving examples of points of intervention into the current linear system of materials management. And for me, at least, I can conceptualize this much easier. The idea of sort of heading off the disposal of materials further upstream instead of at the threshold of a landfill. So, you know, we've got, you know, the materials are being extracted and produced, and then sort of along the way we have options for redesigning, for repair, reuse, rot or composting, recovery. So, you know, hopefully that was helpful for you. That's my favorite illustration. All right, so now that we've hopefully got a good grasp on the concept of zero waste and what zero waste might look like on a college campus, I'm going to bring us back to the Climate and Sustainability Action Plan and its zero waste objectives. So we've checked off objective 1.1, basically. We've established a campus zero waste working group, again, because of the existence of the Sustainability Council's Zero Waste Committee. This committee was tasked with working on objective 1.2, which was the development of a campus zero waste strategy, or zero waste guidelines, as we started calling them. Now, it quickly became apparent that there were significant hurdles for the committee to develop any sort of strategy in achieving zero waste at Westchester. And I'm really curious, this is one that I'm gonna open up to the audience, whether virtual or in person. Can anybody guess what those hurdles were? And I'm gonna give you a second or two, just shout it out and I'll probably hear or see the text.
Amy can hear fairly well if you want to just speak up. Is that correct, Amy?
Yeah, I can hear you. And 5. What's that?
We don't have a policy. We don't have a policy for it.
Yeah, so along those lines, yes, you're correct. We don't have a policy. We don't have a current baseline, and there's no current way to track progress towards zero waste. So that's really what sort of started to come up in these zero waste committee meetings is, you know, well, how can we create a plan for getting to zero if we don't know where we're starting from? And we have no way of tracking our progress. It's a little bit like kind of wandering around in the forest at night with no trail and no map. I'm just kind of hoping that you're going to land in a parking lot somewhere. So that really sort of, put an end, or at least a pause, on the efforts to develop those guidelines. And we started talking about the need for doing some sort of waste audit on campus to at least see where are we starting from, where are the leaks in the system, and get a broader scope of our materials management system as it currently exists. So enter the Post-Landfill Action Network, or PLAN. Woo. You may have heard of them before. Westchester University is a member of the Post-Landfill Action Network, and we use their resources often. We've attended their conferences for a few years now. They're really fantastic. And the students love working with them, and they love the Zero Waste Conference every year. But we became highly intrigued by this program that they developed called the Atlas Assessment Fellowship. And this fellowship accepted students in to guide and mentor them as they conducted a fairly comprehensive waste audit of their own campuses. So basically forming that baseline that we were lacking so much. And it also provides recommendations and a way to track progress in waste reduction efforts in the future as you repeat these assessments. So it sounded like a really great way to get rid of some of those roadblocks for the Zero Waste Committee's efforts, and to compile some zero waste guidelines, and even get some outside help and direction to guide those efforts. So during the spring 2021 semester, the Westchester University Sustainability Peer Educators, Grace Bowden and Andrew James, they applied and were accepted into the Atlas Fellowship, which we were really excited about. And with the help of staff, they were able to identify important stakeholders on campus, who were then contacted. We set up introductions. They were able to conduct a series of interviews, and then under the supervision of the Post-Landfill Action Network, they were able to award scores to the Westchester University campus based on the information that was provided to them by these stakeholders. So this resulted in a comprehensive report being released over the summer, which we poured over immediately, or maybe it was just me. I don't know. I was really excited to get it. And we were lucky enough, in fact, that Grace and Andrew were able to give a presentation in the spring sustainability research and practice seminar that really went into more detail about the process and about the Atlas programs, their philosophy, and how they award scores and such. I'll go over that briefly, but I would really recommend going back and watching the recording of that presentation if you get a chance, because they were so much more involved in this. So you probably want to get it straight from the horse's mouth if you want a more comprehensive idea of what that process looked like. So I'm mostly just going to be going over the results of the report. So let's see here. Next slide. Before I do the big reveal of our scorecard, I'm just gonna, kind of briefly preface the report with information on how points were awarded. So Grace and Andrew were instructed to award points in accordance with the zero waste hierarchy, which I shared with you earlier, that sort of upside down pyramid. So 3 points were awarded for source reduction efforts and initiatives. 2 points were awarded for reuse initiatives, and we got 1 point for recycling composting initiatives. You'll also see on the scorecard that I'm about to share with you a reference to Scope 1 and Scope 2 goods. Scope 1 really refers to those materials purchased by the university which remain in their direct control. So think office supplies, office furniture, construction materials, things of that nature. And then the scope 2 goods really refers to those materials purchased by the university that they then have limited control over, like food waste from the dining hall, disposable dishware, you get the idea. So without further ado, here we go. Here's the scorecard. I'm just going to build a little tension here, maybe a drum roll or something. Here's our scorecard. Ta-da! So the scorecard reveals that our campus got a total of a 43.1%, which isn't great for our first round, but this is really what we wanted. We wanted a baseline, right? We wanted to know where we were starting from so that we could track where we're going. And it's a very neatly packaged baseline too. I'm fond of the visual. So we obviously, in looking at this scorecard here, we did a little bit better in the scope 2 goods than we did in scope 1. But we landed a bit shy of reaching that lowest level of certification, which is the bronze. So you've got bronze from 59 to 69%, silver 69 to 79. You get the idea. Gold and platinum. So this first year we got awarded a participation certification, which is great. And I'm not discouraged at all. I hope you aren't in seeing those scores. But now we get to kind of dive into the meat here a little bit of the matter and see where we're succeeding, where we're struggling, and where we might want to aim our efforts in the future. So the scores are further broken down by system and programs, so that we can really zero in on what harmed us the most for the different scopes for the different programs. For scope 1 over here, we really struggled in the hard to recycle materials. So think, plastic film, light bulbs, batteries, things of that nature. Also in bin standardization. This isn't bin standardization for things like, food waste. It's really more, like I said, for those scope 1 hard goods that the university has direct control over, construction waste and things of that nature. And then in scope 2, we struggled most in the reusable dishware area, and we could really make up some difference in composting and things of that nature. But you'll see in policy, we actually did pretty good in both of the scopes. We actually got a bronze certification in our scope 1 goods. And I'm going to dive in a little bit deeper here to the numbers in just a second, but that is like the one area that we actually did, score high enough to get bronze. So let's take a quick look at the more detailed scores here. This is the score sheet. So you can see in scope 1, which is up here, and where I was just talking about, you can see clearly where we need to improve. So we've got, let's see here, in the surplus program policies and communication, we actually did pretty good. We've got pretty good policies in place that require office staff to look at surplus before they make a decision to purchase something new. But then you see the surplus program itself and the managed materials, we scored a little bit lower on, which just means that we probably need to beef up our surplus program. The policies are there, but if the program isn't substantial enough, then it's not really going to do much to help offices get things that they need. And then they'll turn to purchasing off campus anyway. So we can see a little bit of a gap there. Also, our hard to recycle materials seems to be a little bit lacking here. We've got a 71 out of a possible 187 points. So that's another thing that we might want to focus on in the future. And then also our e-waste collection infrastructure. We only got an 8.5 points out of 88. So those are sort of some key areas that we might want to think of as we're drawing up zero waste guidelines for scope 1 materials. In scope 2, we scored pretty all right in policies favoring bulk items. But actually, we did okay in the food waste reduction initiatives and education as well. And the hydration station availability, you'll see we got a 14 out of 24 there. And the food recovery program, we got some points for that. We actually got extra credit. If you look down in the extra credit around education, we got 31 points out of 31.5 out of a possible 47 points. So we seem to be doing pretty good in our educational efforts, but the areas that we might want to work on are the reusable to-go-ware program. We only scored 11 out of 97 possible points there. And a composting program, we only scored 8 out of 47. So as you start sort of, sorting through the data, you can start to form a picture of, where our weaknesses are and where we have some strengths. So now the next question is, how do we compare to other campuses that went through this Atlas assessment? And Plan actually found that the average campus score falls between 40 and 50%. So don't be too discouraged by that 43. We're pretty on average. And what I did here is I just took a quick snapshot of all the rankings of the colleges and universities that participated thus far in this assessment. And by the way, way to go, Haverford. For getting a bronze, our neighbor. That's really cool to see. I was excited to see that. Westchester is currently showing up here as number 17, but I realized as I was sort of sifting through the data that they had made a mistake and they awarded us a 46% here, when really it's 43. So we would technically be bumped down one more, but I was still encouraged to see that, like, University of Wisconsin and Madison, like, we're just underneath them, and they're, I had a pretty good impression, that they were making some forward progress. So, like, still, I think we're doing pretty okay here, at least for our starting point. So this is just to say that, we're not too far off the mark. Actually, most schools that certified at all only got bronze, and we're just a few points away from that. So there's really nowhere to go but up. And we have already made a lot of progress on some of these points that we didn't get awarded extra points for. So I'm encouraged. I think that we've got a great future ahead of us. And then also, keep in mind that this is just a handful of schools that even thought to pursue this type of assessment and certification. There's so many schools nationwide that wouldn't even consider this. So I think that still we should really be patting ourselves on the back right now for taking these steps. Okay, so now that we have this report, we've got our baseline, what's next? It now sort of falls on the shoulders of, interested parties, since it's all really volunteer based for the most part, and on the shoulders of the Zero Waste Committee to revisit the drawing up of a set of campus zero waste guidelines. And luckily, as I said before, this report report that we received over the summer, it does include recommendations which could be drawn on in this effort. So that's what we're going to spend some time on now. Here's a summary of recommendations that Plan made for our waste reduction efforts. There's a lot more like numerous detailed recommendations when you really dig into the report, but the little snapshots that I'm going to be sharing with you now are really sort of like their most prominent recommendations and a short summary of this. And this first section, I think, is really the most important. Let's see here. So the first, really the first 2 points are very similar to what we have right now in the climate action plan. It's basically objective 1.1 and 1.2, gather a zero waste task force, which we have. We just took a little bit of a pause because of the pandemic. So, number one is just to gather everybody back together. And number two is to develop a strategic vision for zero waste, AKA the zero waste guidelines. And it's important that we, as we develop a strategic vision for zero waste, that we also think about a timeline to achieve that. So that'll be sort of, an important part to include as we develop these guidelines. But then number three, I think, is also extremely important. And it's basically just saying that we need to put some teeth behind these zero waste guidelines institutionally. So whether that means we need to restructure how programs are managed, who has responsibilities for what resources we have to achieve these, we really need to sort of back up institutionally the guidelines that are developed. And one of the important recommendations that they made was that the university employ at least one person full-time dedicated to advancing the waste reduction initiatives. Because again, like I said so far, everything that's been done has been mostly voluntary by faculty, staff, students, and again, taking that into consideration, we did quite well. We have no full-time staff member dedicated specifically to achieving zero waste on campus. So that's going to be really important moving forward, and that's something that even counties and municipalities have struggled with in terms of waste reduction efforts, is that just because you put the bins out doesn't mean that zero waste is just going to happen. We've got to start sort of moving away from that mentality of if you build it, they will come, and really try to see if there's ways that we can provide the backing, the support, the resources, and the enforcement in order to make zero waste happen. So the next section here summarizes some recommendations in terms of scope 1 goods. And I'm sorry if the text is small. I don't know how it's looking there in the room. I can summarize this as they recommended that we really expand our campus surplus program and establish more clear requirements that staff utilize the campus surplus both to procure needed items, but also to send unneeded items. So, that's just something that is just going to be really important moving forward, and it's there. But not a lot of people know that it's there, and at least the last few times that I went to visit surplus, they didn't have a lot of inventory. They donated things further, or they sold it. So I think really having a place where we have a good inventory of items that can be used, and we have very clear communication to office staff that they need to look there first before purchasing new items, and that also when they're done with items, whether that's furniture or whatever, that they go to surplus. This also will pertain to office supplies, which I'll talk about a little bit further, as we do have some efforts sort of in the beginning stages now of having like an online forum and a place where office staff can place items that they have excess of, or to ask, you know, if another office has something that they need. That's sort of in the beginning stages, but you sort of get the idea. We also need to maybe think about expanding our efforts with hard to recycle materials. And again, we have actually made some progress on this since the report came out. We have a new waste hauler on campus. I'm not sure if you heard, JP Mascaro, and they actually into the acceptable recyclables, they can now accept flexible plastic packaging, which is best described as like chip bags, candy wrappers, things like that, that are actually hard to recycle items and defined as hard to recycle items by the Post Landfill Action Network. So those are now acceptable. So next time around, we'll get more points for that. But we also need to think about things like electronics and light bulbs and batteries and things of that nature, which we just don't really have a good system for. And now we have an additional hurdle in that we've just received information that some of the local companies that used to take toner cartridges back for recycling no longer accept those. So an item that we used to have easy access to recycling, we're now going to have some potentially additional challenges there. Then they also recommended that we consider establishing a campus thrift store or repair shop and or skill share workshops where we're providing a place for items to come to be repaired, or for members of the campus community to learn how to repair themselves. And that's also sort of in the works. we're making plans and hoping and dreaming, you know, so maybe by the next time we have an assessment, we'll be able to give ourselves some points there as well. The last recommendation really pertains to having things called free spaces in residence halls, or even in office buildings. Think of spaces that have, you know, really a shared interest. I know that the English department, I think that they still have a section where they offer up free books and folders and things like that.
Yep.
Free spaces where people can come and take, you know, anything that they need. So establishing more things like that was also a recommendation. Okay, and on to scope 2. And I'm almost done, and then we're going to open it up for conversation. Scope 2, so again, those materials that the campus purchases but has limited control over once it leaves their hands. We are recommended to expand our to-go-where program, including collection points in non-dining facilities, so residence halls, academic buildings. We do have a reusable to-go-where program, sort of. We have it in the Lawrence Dining Hall, but there's no way to, you can't use it campus-wide. You have to use it in the dining hall. So you couldn't go to a food truck, you couldn't go to Chick-fil-A, you know, and give them, you know, give them your used to-go-where container. So they're really talking about expanding it as like a universal system on campus, so that no matter where you're eating, you can have this same container and you can bring it back and they'll accept it and wash it. And, you know, that's the dream. And then also places to collect them that aren't dining locations, like I said, like residence halls, maybe, you know, over at the rec center, you know, just making it easier for people. They've also recommended that we establish a campus-wide compost collection program, which we're making some strides, at least in the new dining hall. And I'm sure, Brad can speak more to this, and Pete, if he's there, Pete Galloway. But we are at least going to be having a dehydrator installed. Brad, correct me if I'm wrong, dehydrator installed where pre and post consumer food waste can go into, and then the scraps from that are going to a farm nearby. I believe that's the current system, but I'm sure Brad's kind of nodding his head. Maybe he'll tell us more about that in a minute, but we're making strides. They also recommend that we establish a procurement policy for vendors, requiring adherence to this to go where program. So food trucks, for example, we could put that in the contracts that any vendors coming on campus are required to accept our to-go-ware. They would be, perhaps required to eliminate the distribution of single-use plastics, and instead implement the use of compostable disposables instead. They also suggest that we put together some sustainable event guidelines, which is also sort of in progress. But we're not far off. And that's really what I kind of wanted to end on here, is that we have taken some really important steps towards some of these recommendations. There's been a lot of work already done by volunteers that are interested and passionate about seeing Westchester University become a zero waste campus. So, like I said before, we have a move out program that successfully ran for 1 year. That's something that could be in the future expanded to connect to the campus surplus, for example, or to a permanent thrift store. The Green Office program launched in the spring. And like I said before, one of the things that offers to office staff is that there's a website where they can go and they can list up surplus office supplies that they have. If they've got extra folders, or if they ordered one too many things of printer paper, or they've just got a lot of pens, just whatever. It's a place that you can offer that up, and where staff can go and share resources and information too about, sustainable best practices and things of that nature. But that's going to be something that it's completely voluntary at this point. It's not something that we have a policy in place that requires staff to look there, but it's there. We have these hydration stations, so students don't have to bring plastic water bottles to campus if they don't want to. We have the reusable to-go-ware program. It just needs to be expanded. We've had student clubs reach out and advocate with the food trucks to discontinue use of styrofoam. We've had pop-up thrift shops. It's all there. We really just need to expand, and we need to create policies, and we need to put teeth behind those policies, and we need to all find a way to sort of work together in order to achieve our goals. But I feel confident that, if we're able to do these things, if we're able to develop these zero waste guidelines, if we get the institutional support behind it, that the next time we do this assessment in a few years, I feel very confident that we'll at least get to bronze, but who knows? We could already be at silver. The sky's the limit. So that's where I'm going to end it. And now I'm going to open up for questions, and just preface that I am in no way an expert in terms of the Campus Zero Waste initiatives. I just volunteered to sort of tag along to others' work and report on that. So Brad may have some answers to your questions, and I'd like to ask and invite that maybe he hop in and help me with some if I don't have the answers. And yeah, I'll open it up from there.
I think we need to clap first. Can we please clap?
Cheryl.
Yeah, thank you very much, Amy. I will repeat questions here if you can't hear them. I did see that Professor Udell had a raised hand earlier. If Larry is still there, perhaps
Yes.
he wants.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Hey, Larry, how's it
Hey.
going?
So in the interest of sustainability, I'm sitting here without a shirt on, and that's why my camera's off.
Okay, cool.
And also, I thought about coming in for it, but then I thought, no, I'm not going to drive in. So, but I just want to say, I mean, I think it's not a question, but a hand clap, because for those of us that have been here a while, it's astounding how far we've come in such a short time from, I mean, I'd hate to see what our score would have been. Of course, we weren't getting scores, you know, not so many years ago, whatever the number is. And also, so much of this, especially with the zero waste, has been dictated just by the recycling company, the waste company that we had, which dictated to us what we were doing in that area. So now, hopefully, that should take I hope that'll take a big jump. And I mean, zero waste is something that really concerns me in general. I mean, plastic especially. We can try and try and try, but plastics are just a huge problem worldwide, and we're a part of that worldwide problem of how do you get rid of this stuff. But so anyhow, that and that was really my comment. I think it's great where we're going. We have to keep going, and it was great to hear that sort of pulling everything together, Amy. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for chiming in.
And the other piece of it is, like the
Institutional
recommendation, if we can't, that is, no one who's on this Zoom or in this meeting can make anything happen in terms of hiring another full-time person. But it would be great if we could do that. But we got Brad, and to me, getting Brad and you was like getting 3 and 2. So
That's very sweet.
so yeah, thanks for all that you do, and just need to keep doing it.
Yep, that's it.
Amy, I wonder if we could ask Grace Bowden to tell us a little bit about her reaction to the report after having worked so hard to do the interviews.
Yes, please, if you don't mind, Grace.
Yeah, sure. I also just wanted to thank you, Amy, for like going through all of this again, because it was so nice to just like refresh like everything that Westchester is doing, and everything that we can just like expand on, because like that is just so true. It's like we're so close to having all these things be like normal practices and like across the whole campus every year, but we're so close, so it's okay. But yeah, seeing this report was amazing. I loved all of their personalized suggestions for us, especially the like for the food containers, because that is something that I wanted to see on campus every single year that I was there. And like seeing that in the report, I was like, yes, maybe it'll finally happen like everywhere. Like I need this to happen for Westchester. But doing the report was awesome, and I like my jaw dropped like when I got that email from Yu Shen saying like, oh, here it is. I was like, oh my God, like I need to see it. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just really happy it's done, and I know all of this information is in good hands to really have something done with it. Like I know it's not just going to be like a, oh, we did it, that's good. You know, I know you guys are gonna really like take big steps and strides towards like improving Westchester and being more zero waste. So yeah, but if there's any other like questions about the process, I guess I could go in more detail, but we'll leave that if anyone has specific questions, because like Amy was saying, it was kind of there's a lot. So we'll just leave that if someone has a specific question.
I'm so nervous even approaching this presentation, because I'm like, I just need to put it out there that I did not do this assessment. Like if there are detailed questions, I'm gonna need to pass it on. But it was like really encouraging, like just to echo your thoughts of looking through the report and seeing things detailed there that like you personally were like, oh, I just know that we need this. You're like, I'm not crazy. It's there in black and white now. There's an outside group that came and did an assessment, and they're saying they're echoing these sentiments. So yeah. Does anyone else have questions for Grace while we've got her here?
What is the low-hanging fruit? So in the Business and Public Management Center, faculty have a recycling bin with a teeny tiny little garbage.
What was the most challenging part for you for collecting all this information?
Okay, it sounds like there were two questions at the same time there. I heard one, and I don't know how well everybody can hear each other, but it sounded like, is that you, Joan, in the room? Okay, yeah. Okay, so Joan was asking a question about the bins in the Business and Public Management building. And then Kristen, let's take your question second for Grace about the collection of the information. Joan, would you mind repeating your question for us?
Or like if Brad.
Okay, I'll
Yeah,
try to relay the question. Her first question was, what are the low-hanging fruit recommendations that we can make some progress on? And then she referred to the mini bin program, in which we have office level recycling bins and a small waste bin that hooks onto them.
I don't know if I'm exactly familiar with the mini bins in the office in the business building, but are you saying like the little bin? Mine's like full, so this is kind of embarrassing. But like these, like, are you talking about those?
It's like you've got a blue recycling bin, and then there's like this little sidecar of a waste bin that's hanging on the side. Have you seen those, Grace? Actually,
I do not spend any time in office buildings, I'm going to be honest. So
That's what we have in Anderson.
Yeah, I think I could jump in on that for a moment. Joan was interested whether that has been implemented across campus, and the answer is that they are in the process of doing so. And I think custodial services has a target of distributing those to all academic and office buildings on campus this fiscal year to complete that process. It does come with some policies around individuals being responsible for transferring their waste to a centralized bin in the offices. And it encourages visually and practically that those materials that could be recycled get recycled by having a larger bin for recyclables.
yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Amy, I wonder if you could take a crack at Joan's first question about what are the low-hanging fruit, the easiest recommendations that we might be able to act on from the report.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's going to be my opinion because they don't really rank them in terms of what's going to be easiest for our campus to achieve. But I see the low-hanging fruit as, one, the surplus program that we have on campus, because it's all there. Structurally it's there, and actually policy-wise, it's there. We just need to maybe like beef it up a little bit, figure out like why there's not as much follow-through. As there could be. The warehouse is there, and there's tons of space. So we could maybe just delve into that a little bit. And then also the reusable to-go-ware program. Again, it's there. The to-go-ware is already in place. All we need to do is sort of, policy-wise, have the university maybe come up with a policy that just requires all of our vendors or all of the food locations on campus to accept those items. It could be complicated in that, maybe some of these locations don't have the facilities to wash and sterilize them, but could we place collection bins near them that, the dining hall could then pick up and take back. I feel like we're almost there and that we could easily figure it out. Whereas some of these other things that would be really great, like having, this thrift store on campus, which is just like a dream of mine, but that's going to require a lot more steps to get there and time. E-waste collection, if we're talking about setting up a whole recycling system, people have bounced around before, having like collection sites for hard to recycle materials on campus, which would also be great. And I think we need to pursue that. But, I don't think I'd say that would be low hanging fruit. That would probably take more time to coordinate and organize. Anything having to do with asking for space on campus is not going to qualify for low hanging fruit.
I feel like also another area that I feel like should be easier, but definitely isn't, would be like composting. Like you would think like starting that wouldn't be that difficult, but like that is a whole nother thing of like collecting it, transporting it, where is it all composting, like who's maintaining it and turning like the thing, like, depending on what kind you have, I guess. Like in my head, I'm like, oh, that's low hanging fruit. Like anyone can get a compost for their house. Like that should be easy. But I feel like university wide, it would be a bigger undertaking that it would need like pretty much like a full-time staff member just to do that and like ensure that all of the different areas on campus are turning in their compost. It's getting there. It's like, and then, once it's all composted, like being dispersed around like the garden beds or, whatever. So it's really not probably low-hanging fruit, but when you said that, that was the first thing that I thought of. It's like just composting, but.
Yeah, I think you're not too far off there, Grace. I feel like it's just outside of the realm of like low-hanging fruit, in that if we could just find a way to like piggyback and expand on the system that's going in place in the new dining hall, then I feel like we could get there. But yeah, I don't know. Close.
And then Chris, your question.
Oh, just that, what was most challenging for you about collecting all of the data for this?
And like, that question almost makes me like laugh a little bit. I feel like the hardest part was some stakeholders, they just like didn't understand why we were asking certain questions. And so they like either didn't like answer it to the degree that we needed it answered, or they just wouldn't answer it correctly, or they would kind of like touch on it but then like kind of skirt around it because maybe like they knew the answer was bad or something. Like I don't really know. Getting the right answer to actually answer the question so that we could score it like properly was kind of difficult, because like some things I wasn't even familiar with. Like there were things that the graduate assistant that helped me with this, he was more familiar with, like I forget what it was specifically. I think it was about the company that handles our recycling and waste. Like he was way more familiar with that, but like just understanding different things that I was completely not familiar with that then I would have to ask other people about was definitely difficult, because I would have to familiarize myself with it to make sure that we were getting the right information from them, because like towards the end, people from Plan would be revising our checklist, which is where we had all of our answers and all the questions. So they would be revising it to make sure we had like the correct kind of answer for everything that was scoreable. But like you don't want to have to like keep going back to stakeholders and being like, oh sorry, can we get more info on this, or like can you elaborate on that? So I would say that was the hardest part, but like Plan made it so much easier. Like without their framework, I couldn't even imagine doing that. So Plan like saved the day for sure, or saved the semester. They just saved it.
Sarah, I think you said in the chat that you had a question and you're having trouble. with
Yeah,
hearing
well,
things. Go for it, just shoot.
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. The question slash suggestion about the getting the surplus stuff used more, at least for the furniture, my biggest hurdle is the fact that you basically have to make an appointment and walk over there in order to see what's available. So if there was some way to get a standardized listing, and that seems like something maybe like a work study student could do, that says, you know, like, here's what we've got. And then maybe they could take pictures and send it to you. So you could be in your office saying, oh, can you send me pictures of the bookcases? I want to see if they would work. Rather than having to like take the time out of your day to trek over there. I feel like that is what could get the warehouse more usable, is if you didn't have to actually trek over there to look at stuff.
Yeah, I think you're right. Even like a web page, you know, like
Yeah.
something like that where you can sort of browse, because we don't make it easy on people, and then chances are you're gonna walk all the way over there. You'll have like, you know, maybe five chairs max to choose from of varying types, you know, and
Yeah.
and
it's
then
like,
if what you have is not there, then, you know, check, you know, you did what policy said you had to do, but it's not going to make a difference because you couldn't find the thing and now you have to go purchase
and
it.
also, like, once you do that a time or two, well, it's like, you know, it takes time to get over there and check it. And I think they have like limited hours, and the guy who runs it is not necessarily easy to reach. And I'm not blaming him for that. I think his job is more than just manage the warehouse. But
Yeah.
I feel like we made it super easy for people to check what they needed. And then, you know, maybe you do have to walk over there to decide exactly which of these things you want, but you at least know that there's something there to look at.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, super.
Amy and everyone else, we're at 1 o'clock, and we try to be mindful that people have other classes and responsibilities. So if I can get just one last round of applause for Amy's presentation, thank you. And we hope we'll get to see you all next week. We have 8 more fascinating presentations in the series, and we'd be glad to see you there. Thank you.
Brad, if you have to run somewhere, oh, he left. I was gonna tell him I have